you all for joining today. We do know that this is a challenging time for all of us. We recognize that. We realize you are continuing your efforts in response to COVID-19 while engaging in the hard and necessary work of addressing racism and ending structural inequity in our healthcare systems, particularly those serving youth and families. Given that, we really do appreciate the time you're spending with us today. For resources and support in doing this important work, we invite you to visit the Institute's webpage, the COVID webpage, which features our Managing Now for a Better Tomorrow initiative, designed for you to support one another, both in what we can do now and how we together can prepare for a future, both immediate and next steps and beyond. And this website includes recordings to a series of conversations we've had over the past few months, as well as resources and upcoming conversations, including one on Monday on adapting to new ways of practice with LGBTQ+ youth, as well as Fredla's hosting, our partner Fredla with the TA Network is hosting a series on businesses and family-run organizations. So that will include budget and cash flow, nonprofit retirement plans, insurance nonprofit needs, and internal controls for small nonprofits. So please join us and take a look at our webpage and keep up with what we're doing. You can also get updates on upcoming Managing Now for Better Tomorrow conversations by subscribing to the TA Telegram. If you're not already subscribing, we'll be sure to post that in the chat box. So the System of Care Leadership Learning Community, gosh, Beth and I have been doing this for 5+ years. Many of you have longtime members, and we welcome new members with our group today. It's a monthly learning community designed to support System of Care leaders in all roles of System of Care implementation and expansion and sustainability, and that includes project directors, coordinators, PIs, leaders in states, communities, tribes, and territories without grants, and leaders in all content areas, including family, young adult leaders, cultural and linguistic competency leaders, social marketing and communication leaders as well. We address topics of importance to leaders each month, and we do encourage these to be conversations. We really ask you to be interactive. Use the chat box. We know many of you. We recognize your names. You're very good at this. So continue to do that throughout today's discussion. We are going to have an opportunity for questions and answers. Beth and I will be tracking all the questions that are posted in the chat box, and we'll make sure that we circle back and ask our panelists to respond to them at the end. Everyone who registered for today's meeting will receive a recording via email. With the recording will be the PowerPoint presentation. We will also put a link to the PowerPoint in the chat box, and you may download it as we go along as well. We do ask that you stay on at the end. Towards the end, we will post an evaluation link in the chat box. We really value, Beth and I developed this series based on input from you and feedback from you. So we do ask that you stay on, communicate with us, share your ideas and feedback, and participate in the link that will be coming to you at the very end. We also wanted to note, last month, many of you joined us. We started a 3-part series with our colleague Ellen Kagan on leadership during the time of COVID-19 and in the future. This series is designed for leaders, again, in all roles and service systems for children, youth, young adults, and their families. So last month's discussion focused on leading adaptively, and you can watch that recording if you weren't able to participate with us in the last month, and I believe Morgan is going to post that recording link in the chat box for all of you. And we do encourage you to join 2 upcoming conversations in this series, one on leading remote teams scheduled for June 30th, and one on self-awareness of leadership energy scheduled for July 22nd. Now, I'm going to warn you, we've had an amazing response to these discussions, so hurry up and register. They're filling fast, but if you aren't able to register, if you miss out, we will make sure that we disseminate the recording. So look forward to having those discussions in the upcoming months. Many of you may know and hopefully are part of Ideas at the Institute. This is our online learning system, management system. It allows you to be interactive with one another. It's a digital hub where you can share communications, register for webinars, download resources, and seek technical assistance support from experts, including peers like yourselves. You will be receiving a follow-up email from the Institute again with this recording, and we hope that you join us and sign up and continue to participate in our learning community. So our presenters today, I'm really proud and pleased to introduce you to two colleagues of ours at the Institute for Innovation and Implementation at the University of Maryland, Baltimore School of Social Work. Anita Bryan is with us. She is the lead social marketing specialist. Wave to us, Anita. Hello. And Sarah Warner. Sarah is a senior program specialist. Sarah, say hello to everyone. Also at the Institute, they tutor me nonstop about technology and social media, and I'm really happy to spend the time with them today. And today's learning objectives are to identify social media platforms that allow you to connect with and engage your target audience around children's mental health and systems of care, to establish social media goals, learn how to schedule posts and manage your accounts with efficiency. I'm not very good at that one. I'm interested in learning more. Monitor your progress by identifying key metrics for success. This can all go into your social marketing and communication plans as well and link with your evaluation outcomes. And evaluate the latest trends in social media platforms. So with that, I'm going to step to the back and I'm going to turn it over to Anita and Sarah. Thanks.
Well, good afternoon. And we're so excited today to speak with you today about social media and how to use it effectively in your social and your marketing goals. This webinar, we're going to offer some actionable items as well as some valuable resources that can be implemented at any level. Many of you have experienced how these platforms influence children and families, especially around children's mental health. And this level of communication is extremely impactful in today's market because it can shape and shift the public's perception and towards some kind of action under a subject matter or goal. So we're going to get started. And the first thing I wanted to go over is, what is social media? And a lot of people have a lot of different answers to this question, depending on your age or your gender or your location or your industry. It has a simple question, but has a lot of different meanings. And I pulled a meaning from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. And I have a poll question that I want to ask you guys before we get started. Can we get that question up? Do we have the poll question?
Folks will have to use the chat.
Oh, okay, no problem. So I'm just going to read it to you. And basically, I just want to find out from you guys, what social media platforms are you using in your organization? What are you using to share your message out to your target audience? Just want to get an idea of what where you guys are. So I see Twitter and Facebook. Those are top contenders. Oh, thank you. Poll question right there.
Polls up title.
Great. Oh, this is great. No, we love this. This is perfect. So if you guys can answer quickly, that'd be great. I added a few on there you may not know about, but pretty much the standard ones as far as going to A to D. So I'd love to see your results. We're going to give you guys a few more seconds. And the reason why I asked this is because we're going to dive deep into each one of them and provide you some insight on how to use them and what audience is on them and what they're using and how to use them effectively. So do we have a few more? Oh, we got a little bit more time. All right. Thank you. I see we have some results coming in. This is great. All right. All right, well, we'll just move on. Can we show the poll results later? Because I think it's still going. Okay. Well, I'm going to move forward. And as we move forward with this, I just wanted to give you some, we went over the dictionary's definition of social media, but I wanted to give you some insight on some experts in the field of marketing. Amy Jo, she explains it as the equalizer. And she's right. It definitely provides a platform for everyone. It doesn't matter where you are. You can get on social media and express your feelings or information. The next one is the community's desire to network. People are always looking for ways to connect to different communities, to share information, or just have a platform for their voice. But I think for today, the one that resonates with me, I think for the system of care, is social media is not media. It's the key to listen, engage, and build relationships. And that's pretty much what we're doing in system of care work. We're listening to children and families. We are finding a way to engage with them on these platforms. And we're building not only just a relationships, we're building communities, ambassadors, advocates for a movement of cause. So I see the results from the poll, and majority of you are on Facebook, which I figured. Twitter comes in second. Instagram, number 3. That's great. I'm glad to see a lot of you guys on Instagram. That is a really powerful platform that you can connect across so many different networks right there. And then YouTube following after. And I'm also surprised to see quite a few on WhatsApp and TikTok. That's great. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. So what we're going to move forward into now is just to go over some quick facts. Majority of the population is using social media. And we're talking about the global population. That's 50%. That's a lot of people. And the average person spends about 2 hours and 24 minutes a day. I think that may be a little bit low, but either way, that's about 700 hours in a year. So that's a lot of time where you can grab someone's attention and communicate with them. But I think overall the overall purpose is to align and enhance your mission and goals. And if you stick with that, that helps you craft your message, target your audience, and reach whatever you're trying to attain, whether you're trying to get people to follow you, to do a poll, to write letters, whatever it is, or just get some information out. This is what you really want to focus on, especially as these platforms pretty much change features and evolve over time. So I just want to go over some of the top ones, which you guys have identified clearly in the poll, and just give you some quick insight on where they are in today's market. I don't know if too many of you know that Facebook owns WhatsApp and Instagram. Hashtags, you definitely need to use them, not just in Twitter, but now pretty much on all the platforms. And then Instagram started out strictly with photos, but has been quickly converting over to some heavy video use. So definitely look at that as well. It is actually having a higher form of engagement over the photos now. LinkedIn has maintained the professional network for experts in their field. It has added some features as far as some professional development, as far as some webinars and training tools, but it's maintained its how they started out. They didn't really go too far and deviate with too many features and bells and whistles. But it's a great resource for information and to connect with people in the field and other fields where you're looking for some valuable insight. And YouTube. Everybody knows a lot of people don't really like to read as much nowadays, but video is growing, and it's now become actually some people's form of TV. They actually watch YouTube more than they actually watch a regular TV. You have about 2.5 billion users, and you have about 1 billion hours watched daily on YouTube. So that just gives you a little bit of insight where they are. We're going to go next into which are ones that are following after, and that is WhatsApp and Snapchat. And pretty much WhatsApp started out for people in the globe traveling a lot and in the global market, and for people to save some money so they wouldn't have to actually use their roaming, being charged roaming charges using their cell phone. So you see a lot of people, that's where they got their popularity, and it just kind of evolved from there. Excuse me. And then we have Snapchat. And Snapchat was for younger demographics. A cool feature was that once you put out some content, you can put an expiration date and it will disappear. And then the other thing is the augmented reality, which is a really popular tool where people pretty much can change their image with some really cool graphics. And now you actually see that feature on other platforms like Instagram for right now. So we are going into a favorite of mine that I'm sure a lot of you might have heard of, and it's called TikTok. And this has been widely used on TV. You hear it a lot with celebrities, and it's a video sharing platform. And it's the most downloadable app for this year in 2020. It has actually surpassed Twitter. It has 8 million users to date. And it has some controversy around it because it has been developed in China, so quite a few government agencies have been blocked from using it. So, and it's also due to a cybersecurity issue, but it is still widely used, especially during this pandemic. It has actually being compared to YouTube. They are competing now, kind of neck and neck for followers, but they've had a couple of issues with some privacy concerns. So if you're looking into TikTok, just make sure that it is in line with your policies in terms of privacy, and if you're connected to any kind of government agencies that may have stopped or blocked them from using this platform. But you will hear more about it and see it more often. The next one I want to go over is Discord. And this is still new. Not too many people know about it. I noticed it wasn't listed in, or no one selected it in the polls. And this started in the gaming community. And it's really popular for gamers to communicate. And now people have just kind of formed their own community where they can share some types of crafts or information. But it's an interactive chat that keeps people engaged, as well as the live content going on at the same time. So it's really a lively screen. And a lot of young people really jump towards that, and it's growing. But it's something to look out for. And our next one is Twitch. Now, this one is definitely becoming just as popular as TikTok. And with this one, this also started out in the gaming community as well, but they have grown into a wider audience where the users are called streamers, and your streamer develops a channel. So you basically have your own network and your own TV channel on this platform. And the biggest popularity feature for this is that you are able to earn money and generate some income by the number of users that view the advertisements that are streamed across your channel. So if they click on it or if they view it, you earn some income. So this is being closely watched because this definitely changes the landscape of social media, and where before people just open up, you know, new platforms or accounts and you weren't really receiving any income. But now people are forming their own business with this. So I would pay close attention because this is growing, and we will see a change and evolve, I think, with other platforms as they see people switching over from Twitch. They've actually, it was a big article about a lot of people leaving Instagram, especially those that were sharing music, and going over to Twitch due to some kind of copyright infringement limitations and stuff. But this is a network that is growing, and I was able to find, if you see on the screen, some people talking about mental health. Not too many experts in the field yet, but people just kind of sharing their insight and what they've experienced with that. So again, this is a platform to definitely look out for. And I am going to turn this over now to Sarah, who is going to give you some insight on the audiences on each of these platforms.
Thanks so much, Anita. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Warner. And so as Anita has gone over all the different platforms, there's a lot. And each one represents really a different demographic. So what I'm going to go over is some of the demographics on some of the more basic social media sites. That's going to help you identify which platforms you should be on based on who your target audience is. So if you're looking to target youth with your messaging, or families, or professionals in the field, you'll want to look at these different demographics. If you want to use multiple platforms, which most people do, you might want to alter your messages based on the demographics of that platform. So if you're posting the same thing on two different platforms, that one has more youth and one has more professionals, you might want to shift your messaging. And you can also look at your partner organizations or organizations that are similar to yours and see what platforms they're using, as well as for a guide to kind of get a sense of where you should be. Next slide, please. So these are the recent demographics from Facebook. So as you can see here, there's slightly more women on Facebook than men, and it includes here that non-binary people are not included in the data. So you can see also that most people on Facebook are between the ages of 18 and 49, with youth under 18 being a smaller percentage. So if you're trying to reach youth under 18 specifically, you might want to look at a different platform than Facebook. You can see here it's pretty evenly split between locations as well as income and education. So you can see here that most organizations use Facebook because they can reach a really wide demographic, and as Anita said, this is the most commonly used platform. So that's why most of you responded and said that you do use Facebook. Next slide, please. So for Twitter, Twitter has less data because they don't collect as much, but you can see here, similarly to Facebook, it's a pretty even split with slightly more younger people being on Twitter, as well as less people living in rural communities. Next slide, please. And for Instagram, now it's pretty clear that Instagram is much more popular around, among young people, as well as people who live in urban locations. Less folks who live in rural communities are using Instagram. And you can see in terms of income and education, it's pretty evenly split. Next slide, please. And as for LinkedIn, you can see here that there are far less folks who live in rural communities versus urban communities, and much more people with college educations, which would make sense if folks are using this for professional development and for finding jobs. About half the folks on LinkedIn also make over $75,000 a year. And you can see here that it's pretty evenly split between genders. So now that you know where your audience might be in terms of platforms, you're going to want to begin planning. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Anita. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And what we have right now is, after we went through the audiences to see where each platform, and I advise you guys to definitely, when we provide these slides, to look at that in more detail, because this is going to help the planning process as you move forward. Because a lot of times you might be sharing some information and content out on the wrong platform for the wrong audience, especially as they shift. So I think right now what we're going to talk about is the guidelines. And like I told you, this is a working webinar where we're going to have some actionable items and resources. And we have a lot to remember, but we will have this available for you afterwards. And the thing that to remember as we're moving forward with guidelines is there's 3 parts to it. There's policy, there's the social media guidelines, and there's the style guide. And the policy just helps the organization how they can conduct themselves overall. It's just the rules of engagement. And because this is a call and response, you have to make sure that your presentation is vital so that you're upholding your reputation with content that validates your expertise, and that your response speaks your language and your tone. And as we move forward also to the guidelines, as you're creating these content, it just provides you just a step-by-step instruction. And, it gives you the overall mission and goals, but it helps you cut down, I should just say in a way, it's not set up like in a traditional sense where you have all these steps to go through for review. So you do need some quick guidelines that you can go to just to say, okay, I can say this, I can't say that, and just give you a really good reference. And then the last part is the style. After you create and come up with the strategy and the concept, how does this look on social media? And that means not just the content, what you say as text, but what are your visuals? What is your tone? Are you going to use a video? So you need to make sure that looks like your organization overall. And I know a lot of times I get pulled up several times where I may come up with a good image, but maybe not the right content. Content, maybe not the right image. And this is where you need to have that checks and balances and that tool and that resource that gives you some reference points to make sure that you're staying in line with that. So this is a good thing to develop as you're moving forward with social media. A lot of times this gets overlooked because we're very quick to open the accounts and start communicating. But this right here would help you in the long run, especially as we move forward and we talk about the call and response in reference to what you will receive when people visit your platforms or visit your accounts. So now we're looking at social media guidelines. And we have a tip sheet online where it would help you develop them and just gives you a sample one. Because a lot of times it's where do you start with? And, where do you, how can I start this process? So we have a tip sheet online that can help you with this. And then I also have available for you, once this is available, download an example from the Red Cross, where they narrowed it down not just to social media overall, but just to their online communication efforts. How should the person, whoever's handling online communication, respond and work in conjunction to the Red Cross standards and procedures? And then we have the last one is from 2019, which was on National Children's Mental Health Awareness Day. And this one is targeted and set up for an actual campaign or initiative. So again, you can have guidelines for an overarching organization, but you can segment them out depending if it's for a particular audience or for a platform or medium, and also for campaigns and initiatives. So just to think about that, and I just wanted to provide those examples to you guys. So we are now going to go into just going over the social marketing process and how it connects to social media. What we've been talking about a lot is the goal. What are your goals? You always have to go back to your goals because that keeps you in line. But then the audience. When you deep dive into your audience, you'll know what platforms they're on and how they're communicating on those platforms. So that's why it was vital, those slides that Sarah showed, because it helps you save time and resources where you might be putting them towards the wrong, moving in the wrong direction. And then the message. What are you saying to that audience? And how are you saying it, your tone? And then the channels. And that goes back to earlier when I talked about the different platforms and channels that can be used to share your social marketing efforts. So again, just always go back to the planning process and making sure that you're hitting those points. And today we're pretty much going from goals to channels. And then I have another question, another poll question for you guys. And I'll just say it out loud while they're putting it up. And it's, do you have, before we move forward, and it's about your social marketing team. We mentioned a lot of work to be done in social media and how to work effectively, but do you have a team? Do you have the support systems needed to be productive when you're doing this type of work? So we're going to give you guys some time to fill that out, and I'm sure I kind of might have a guess on what's going to be selected more than others, but it's something to think about because this is not a one-man show with this. A lot of insight and input is needed, even though it's short content very quickly, but it's very powerful and it goes a long way. I'm going to move on to the next as you guys fill that poll out. And this is about a team effort. And what happens is I wanted to give you guys an overview of some team members and their titles. And again, this isn't concrete. You can add to this or subtract, but this is just a standard. And one is like your social media manager. And they pretty much run, you could say run the show. They come up with the strategy, the planning, the process, what tools to use, and they look over all areas of social media. So they get the ball rolling. Then you have your content creator. So after you have the strategy and where you're going, you need someone to develop the content and how it looks on each one of these platforms, and if the message is conveying effectively, because each platform has, as we know, has a different display. How you have a character limit. Some of them you have endless character. You don't have a limit, and some things look better on others. Instagram, you have to a lot of times change your image to be a little bit more square, where you're a little bit more flexible on Facebook. So things of that nature. Then we have your manager, and they are the voice. They're looking at what people are saying. They're looking at the tone. They're responding to replies and comments. And this person, just like anyone else, really has to adhere to your social media guidelines and policies because they are responding to the public on behalf of the organization. And you want to make sure that that's in line with what you want to say out to everyone. You don't want to have to go and backtrack or apologize for something. And I'm sure we all have seen that recently with several companies, people having to apologize, and it takes longer to, and I would just say this, it takes longer to apologize and clean up as opposed to review and set up correctly. Then we have the last part, what is the analyst. And the analyst is going to look at how are these efforts being effective. They look at the analytics on the back end, the traffic to the website, the click-throughs, the shares, the likes. And we have a tip sheet for this and on our website, and you can measure your communication efforts. And this gives you insight and some information and guide on what to look for, how to use that analytics and that information, because that information is vital because it's going to go back to the social media manager who's looking at the overall strategy to see if it's working and where tweaks may be needed or some things may need to be cut out. So again, everyone's vital in this process, and I don't want to scare everyone saying, oh my goodness, who do I have to pull in for this? But just think about it. Having these steps involved alleviates the pressure on one person or a small team, but spreads it out so that everyone can have a role that's effective, that they're expert in, and that it can run smoothly and actually in a timely manner, which will be discussed later with Sarah in terms of scheduling and being consistent on these platforms. So we are now going to move to Sarah, who's going to talk about SMART goals for social media.
Thanks, Anita. So once you have a plan in place, you have your team assembled, you're going to want to establish social media goals. As Anita said, we have a tip sheet on this that can elaborate more. But for those of you who are familiar with SMART goals, this is a great goal setting model for social media as well. So you want your goals to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So I have two examples of SMART goals up here that we use, which is I will increase the number of followers on X platform by X percentage every month. So I think something that would be realistic would be between 2 and 5%, depending on how much you're posting and where you're at, like if you're just starting out or if you've been established. Another possible goal would be through social media-based outreach, our program will reach X number of families by 2021. These are just two examples of possible social marketing goals. So then once your goals are set, you'll need to create some content for your pages. So social media is highly visual, and you really need engaging graphics if you're going to reach your audience. So for creating your own graphics, there are a lot of online tools that make it really easy. Here at the Institute, we use a tool called Canva, which is all online, and it's free, available for free, though you do have an option to pay monthly for more features. I use the free version, and I think it works excellent. It's really user-friendly, and you can teach yourself how to use it in 20 minutes or less. Next slide, please. So Canva allows you to create graphics that are specifically formatted for whichever platforms you're using. So as Anita mentioned, Instagram is better for like square images, and then some other platforms, they're more like rectangular, and they might look a little funny if you use the wrong one, but Canva makes it really easy because they have templates for every social media platform in their ideal size. These templates are really easy to edit by dragging and dropping, and you can also upload your own images, such as photos or your organization's logos, and you can add them to the graphics. Next slide, please. And these are just a couple examples of graphics I created using Canva. The two on the left are ones I created for Children's Mental Health Awareness Day last year, and the one on the right was for a conference that we held. I put some more links to some other helpful content creation websites on our last slide as well. Next slide, please. And now that you have some posts ready to go, it's time to get them out to your audience. We strongly recommend scheduling your social media posts ahead of time. It's sort of like meal planning, where you can get like a week or even 2 weeks worth of content all ready to go. You can have it approved and reviewed, and then you can get it scheduled to go out over time. This is going to be really helpful because posting consistently on a regular basis is key to help keeping your audience engaged. It'll also help you grow and allow you to keep everything you're posting all in one place and keep track of it all. So we at the Institute use a platform called Hootsuite. Again, there is a free version of Hootsuite, but you can also pay for it. I really like Hootsuite because it makes social media more work-friendly, where a lot of people use, for their personal social media accounts, they might use their phone, and you might not want to use your personal phone for posting on your work social media accounts. So Hootsuite allows you to do everything from your desktop computer. Managers such as Hootsuite also allow you to schedule posts, which some platforms allow you to do it in-house and others do not. So I find it really helpful for scheduling as well. Next slide, please. You can also use Hootsuite to track some of your followers' engagements, how many likes or views your posts get, to help you keep track of any goals that you have. However, it does have a few limitations, especially for like Instagram. It doesn't allow you to see comments or respond to comments. So you're still going to have to use either the mobile version or the desktop version of the other platforms to make sure you're fully engaging. And the free version does not allow you to track data such as numbers of followers, but you can easily keep track of this in a spreadsheet if you don't want to pay for Hootsuite. But again, if there's any data that you want to pull specifically from your social media sites, then they all do provide that data as well. Instagram provides insights. Facebook will let you know how much growth you're having, how many people have followed you, etc. But Hootsuite just puts it all in one place. And now I'm going to pass it back to Anita. Thank you.
No, thank you, Sarah. And I advise everyone to definitely look into Hootsuite because I'm looking at the poll now, and it says that majority of you do not have enough team members to support your efforts in this. So this is a good tool to help with that when you have limited resources, as well as it includes people to help with this process. Again, scheduling, that it's a good review. You can put it up there and it's one and done. So definitely get a chance, look at Hootsuite. We'll definitely have this shared in the link in the slides afterwards, and hopefully in the chat for you guys to just get an opportunity to check it out. Right now, we're going to go into comments. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with your messaging and goals. And you're going to, this social media, a lot of times people forget this is a call and response. And they forget the social aspect of it. It is a form of communication where you're not just posting and sharing out like traditional advertisement and you just leave it up there. This is an opportunity for people to, voice their opinion about it. So we all love the positive comments and reviews, but we have to also be ready for the negative comments and feedback. And that goes back to your policies and guidelines and how to respond to that in a proper and professional manner so that you address those concerns correctly. Answering questions, people, because this is a fast-moving platforms and world that we live in, people expect the questions to be answered, not taking like, a couple of days. Unfortunately, sometimes people want a response the same day. We've all been there when we're looking for, we reach out to a company and we're like, oh, wow, they haven't gotten back to me. And that also dampens your reputation because people have had a poor experience, maybe because someone is not checking the inbox of these platforms, which is also another reason why you need team members. So that's something to think about as well. A lot of times people won't always put their questions in the live feed. They will put it in the messenger or the inbox that's not open to the public to view. Reactions as far as emojis and single word comments doesn't mean that your content's not relevant. It's just that the audience, especially the age range, the younger audience, tend to just be a little bit short with it. They like to, share emojis and just quick thank yous, and you can respond the same way. It is now a form of communication that is accepted in a professional setting now. Before emojis was a little bit frowned upon, and now they're just pretty much everywhere. And actually even in emails, I'm sure many of you have seen that people have that in their email marketing. And as far as spam and unwanted mentions, take the time when you open up these platforms to look at ways that you can monitor what comes across your feed. so that you can hide offensive messaging or maybe block some people. Unfortunately, we have folks that spend time just trolling accounts, putting up just, really hateful or mean messaging. So you want to be able to manage that process. That's something that each platform is trying to work on, but because it's so open, they can only do but so much. But they do have the tools on the back end to minimize it. So definitely take the time as you open it up and start communicating, look at ways that you can block that as well. And then we're going to go into advertising on social media. And one of the things with advertising on social media is that, which shouldn't be a shock to anyone, is that because it's grown so much, advertisers have a way now to reach their audience on a different platforms. I'm sure many of you have experienced many ads that have come across your feed. And we have to look at how to use it effectively, because it's not just one type of graphic or information that you put out. You have to sometimes tailor it depending on what you're using. So we do have a tip sheet on that called Social Media for Advertising 101. It actually breaks down each platform and how to advertise effectively using each one of them. So I would advise you to take a chance when you have some time to look at that, especially if you're looking to advertise on any of these platforms. And they evolve a lot, and I want to share with you some tips that our team has come up with in terms of how to do it effectively and that you get a return on your investment. One, when you develop this campaign, you really need to narrow in and find what is the target audience. Who are you talking to? Because who you're talking to on Snapchat may not be the same audience you're talking to on Facebook. And which one are you going after? Select the platforms carefully. And it's key because you can spend it takes some time to set up. And just like anything, these are resources used, and they do have dollars attached to it, which we're all familiar with, so we want to use it wisely. And then that helps you also design your ads correctly. So whoever's designing them would have to make sure that they are displayed correctly on all devices, particularly mobile friendly. Definitely do A/B testing, making sure that when it goes out, it's hitting that audience and you're getting a response at the right time of day, again, on the right platform. And after everything is done and you select the platform and it goes live, do not forget to look at and measure the results. You want to make sure that it works because over time there's going to be new platforms, new features, and a lot of times people are looking for the results that you would get in traditional advertising, and a lot of times it comes in a different manner or fashion. And what I mean by that is you look at more of the impressions and as clicks as opposed to sales or maybe bodies in the room. So there's different ways to look at how to measure social media advertising as opposed to in the past, you would look at the metrics a little bit differently. So for this year, for instance, they were predicting that social media advertising was going to go up 20%. But unfortunately, we had COVID, and that is now looking like a slump in sales. It's still not defined yet. They're still, waiting it out. And that has a lot to do with brands could actually, or organizations could advertise more because people are home, or they could advertise less because people are spending less. So we're still trying to weigh that out. But what they have done is work with influencers. And influencers are people that have an exorbitant amount of followers on their accounts. And they're almost like spokesmodels now for these different organizations and campaigns, as well as, companies with advertising a product. There's been a little bit of a backlash with it, but it has been effective, especially in the nonprofit world where you're trying to reach a bigger audience and have your message conveyed in a way that could speak that particular individual has that target audience, but they know how to transfer that message to them so that they get it and that they move in a direction that can come back to you and hit your goals and align with your mission. So influencers are another way as a workaround that a lot of people are using right now in marketing. I wanted to also go over with you guys the latest trends. We talked about a few of them earlier on, and one of the things is live streaming. A lot of us are home. We're seeing people streaming heavily on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. And this is just people setting up a camera, particularly their phone or their computer, and just speaking to their audience directly. And this is not going away. It has produced some great results, and people are looking for more effective ways to utilize this, even as we move forward into the next phase of this pandemic. So I would advise you to really look into this. We do have a tip sheet on live streaming and how to use it, particularly on Facebook and Instagram. But this has evolved quickly, and people are now finding ways to actually set up graphics behind their image and make it a little bit more branded. And it definitely gets the message across. So definitely look into live streaming. And one of the things on the next slide, yes, I do have it, is we have our tip sheets. And how to use live streaming on Facebook and Instagram, great tool. And then also how to make your video stand out. If you're not ready to live stream and you still want to possibly just do a video and have some control as far as editing, there's some ways to make your video still stand out. People aren't looking for it to be perfect, but there are some tools and tips that can help it to be effective. So definitely check out these 2 tip sheets when you get a chance. And we will move to questions. Thank you guys for coming here, and we're looking forward to hearing some questions from you guys to see how we can extend this conversation further.
Anita, this is Beth. First to the participants, feel free to start putting your questions in the chat box, but I'll start off with a question of my own. You talked about influencers, and I'm wondering how they build such large groups of followers generally, and then how do you get them to spread your own message?
Well, a lot of them, because social media has become the new form of TV, people are following folks. It's twofold. Unfortunately, people were using some tools in the back end where they were gaining fake followers. I don't know if you guys saw that some years ago. And particularly Twitter went ahead and canceled all these fake accounts because people would actually pay a company to add followers to their accounts that weren't actually followers to make them look like they had a lot of followers. I hope you're following me on this. This makes sense. But they have also now have cut that out and managed that. And people now just have become these internet sensations. It's just the lay of the land now. I really don't have an answer to it, just the fact that just where we are, where in the past people will look at TV and different forms of media and radio, that's how you became a celebrity. Now you can just be a celebrity just being online and being very controversial or just having some great images up or some other type of images up and things of that nature. So that's how these people build these followers now, and they're really extremely active on it. So the more active they are on it, like they spend their whole day, that's their job, and they just gain these followers. And how do you connect with them is not so much how do you connect with them, it's just making sure that you connect with the right one. They're all looking for ways for people to utilize their platform or their account as a form of advertisement, because one of the things that this isn't free. People pay for this. So they pay these influencers. People make really good money, like, yearly salaries to do this. So you want to make sure that you identify one that has the message and image that is aligned with your goals and what your overall structure of your organization is. And it's just a matter of reaching out to them and seeing if they're interested. Just like that's the part that's still traditional, is just kind of reaching out and seeing if they would like to do it. But the overall for you is to make sure that you really go through their feed and make sure that if you do use them, that is no backlash and that you don't lose your audience or who you're trying to gain.
Okay, thank you. And is it worth it for messages around children's mental health or systems of care to actually pay some of these influencers to get your message out more broadly?
It depends what your goal is. If you are trying to, a lot of times with children's services or things of that nature, a lot of them won't usually charge sometimes because it's something like a give back, something charity that they're giving back to. So it's just, and especially if it's something that resonates with them and they're in line with. So I would look first to see if they're just interested in just supporting. before you pay. A lot of the payments are usually for brands that are trying to generate sales, where in children's services, you're trying to generate or really provide information or get people to move in a direction as far as maybe support a campaign. So
Right.
that I would look more towards just looking at people that may be somebody that was in foster care and they've always talked about the foster care experience, and they may be just interested just to support you because they like what you do. So look at that before you look at trying to do any type of payment for that.
Okay, great. That's very helpful. Dylan has a question for you, Anita. Have there been any particular strategies that you've employed to garner more followers on Facebook or Instagram? You see, I need a little work on this, particularly taking into account demographics.
One of the strategies that I do is that I'll follow other accounts, and I would provide, make a comment, or if I put up something, I would tag them so that their followers would see that they've been tagged, and it would just be kind of like that type of exchange. That's one of the tricks that I would do, especially if they have that demographics that I'm looking towards. That's a great strategy to use. If you see some type of article, making sure that you tag where the reference comes from. If you can find the writer or whoever the author is, that's also a good way to do that. Following others, commenting, being engaging. The more engaged you are, the more followers you would get. Also putting this information on your any kind of print materials, website. A lot of times I still see on some system of care websites, your social media is hidden. If you want followers, you need to make that present and up top, just to be like, follow us, here, and make that, and have a really good real estate on whatever platforms and mediums you're using. So that's another way too, to make sure that it's always present and that people know your handle. So, but definitely being more engaged and following others and providing and being social with them on their platforms with their followers. So that's the tactics, and it takes some time, but it's worth it. I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
Yeah, I thank you, Anita. I second that, and I just want to add that just be totally shameless, really, about putting your handles out there. Like make sure, as Anita said, at the top of your website, if you have an email list, a lot of email programs like Constant Contact let you put your social media handles in every single one of your emails. If you're traveling and doing a presentation somewhere, you can put your handles in your PowerPoint slides. Just really put them out there and don't even worry about it.
Okay, good tips. Thank you very much for that. Carlos has a question. On the paid version of Hootsuite, are you able to post stories and also add multiple pictures in one post?
Unfortunately, no. Hootsuite does not allow that for Instagram.
Okay. Carlos, in addition, wants to know, in terms of advertising on social media, what would your advice be on a budget range to start with?
I think you would, they have these things where you can actually set up how much you want to spend per day on some of the platforms. So I would look at starting on a medium end, and I don't know where that stands with you, depending on how far you want to go in your demographics. So this is where it's tricky, because it's not just, okay, you spend X amount of dollars and you get this X amount of exposure. It's really aligning it with the time, the location, and the reach, I should say. So I would start with something not too overdoing your budget, just to test it out. And if it has a really good, then I would increase moving forward. I don't know, I won't give you a number on that because it all depends on where you want to start. But I would start with testing it out with something on the lower end, just to check, test it out first, and then increase as you move forward, just to make sure that it's in line and you're getting what you want, because it's not a traditional sense of advertising. And I would do it in twofold. I don't know. Sarah, what's your feedback on that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, okay.
So you would have to, what you're saying, if I understand it correctly, is that you would be monitoring the impact of that.
Yes.
on whatever it is you're trying to accomplish before you start investing more funds.
Exactly, because you really want to make sure you do it correctly and how it's set up, because they break it down and they have a really simple structure, but you just want to make sure that you're getting that return, because a lot of times people go on social media and when they don't get that ROI that they're looking for, it's a lot of times because it's the way it's set up and not really doing a deep dive into how to do it effectively. So really do your research and test it out before you blow your budget, and then you're like, wow, I don't have anything else. And you might want to use multiple platforms. Sometimes people just focus on one, which is fine if you really know that's where your audience is, but you might want to use on multiple as well. So that's why I say start out of smaller and then grow from there.
And the metrics that you might use to see if you're having the impact that you want, I know you've talked a little bit about that, but what are the most important things to look at? Is it just how many people have seen it, how many open? What is it that is the most important thing to look at as to whether you are having the impact that you want?
One of the things is, what is the goal? Like if you're trying to get people to come to a particular site, how many people actually clicked from that ad and went to your site? Are you looking for people to sign something or participate in a poll or a survey? Did it yield those results after you put it on there? So it goes back to what is the overall goal that you set for that advertising campaign. And that's a lot of times people looking for people to move towards something. Particularly in system of care, usually a survey or a campaign or something of that nature. And that goes back to linking it to your site or a survey or whatever it is that you're pushing out there.
Okay, great. That's very helpful. Michelle had a question about whether leaders should be active on social media for their organization in their own time in order to stay abreast of current trends. Or is that not necessarily to understand this world? And what do you advise and what do you do in your own time on your own social media feeds?
Do you want to add this, Sarah, or you want to jump in, or? Okay,
Yeah.
Sure. I think leaders for organizations should be on social media and be active, because they do, people are looking for their voice. I worked with an organization, National League for Nursing, and it was pretty hard. And when she got it, our CEO, Bev Malone, it took off because people wanted to hear from her. Social media has made it really personal for people to, understand the organization, not just from what we're posting out as far as what we're doing, but who is the face of that organization. And it does make a difference when a leader is present on social media. And it's hard because a lot of times they have a limited time, but it is a common practice and that is being widely used. And if you can find time to get your leader on there, and maybe it's some pre-crafted tweets or whatever it is they use, it helps. Because a lot of times people are like, wow, if this person says it, I need to follow what they're doing. And a lot of times we would find out when, at the NLN, when Bev would tweet something, we would get a higher level of engagement because it came from her account, just because she's Bev, who she was. So they do have an influence and effect on your social media and marketing goals overall.
Right, so even if you have social marketers and your staff are putting out the messages on all these platforms, for you as a leader on your own time and on your own accounts, you can bring more attention to those by using your own outreach on social media, is what you're advising.
Yes, definitely, because information right now, due to the high level of misinformation, people really want to validate. They want another level of validation that what they're getting is correct and right. So if you have someone that is known and has a reputable reputation to be an expert in this field, where they can actually rely on whatever they say, the information that they give, that helps, because there's just so much misinformation out there. So you want to have, it also gives some validity to what the organization is putting out if they have an expert also sharing and supporting on social media as well.
Okay, thank you, Anita. I see, Sarah, you're following Anita's advice right now in the chat, pulling in all of our links to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, so that you can see what we at the CA Network and the Institute at University of Maryland are, the messages that we're trying to get out to the field as well. So thank you for that, Sarah. Other questions from participants, other insights, comments, anything that you'd like to share?
I think they said, what do we do on our own social media? What do you do on your own social media, Sarah? How are you on social media, your own accounts? I see that question. What do you do on your own time, your own social media feeds?
I actually don't use social media a whole lot, but I definitely think now there is just so much vital information on there, like especially about racial justice. I think there's a lot of resources being shared, and I think I really think that like social media is really the forefront of information sharing. So I've gotten more into it recently, as someone who wants to do some self work and think about like how I can advance racial justice. I really think social media has been a key part of that for me.
Yeah,
that's definitely good.
Yeah, and I have a confession that I also haven't used my own social media accounts very much, but I think you've inspired me to try to do that as long as you're both available for the occasional tutorial.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Carlos has another question. What strategies would you recommend to promote Facebook or Instagram live video streaming?
For that, I would definitely promote email marketing, which is still one of the top forms of marketing, getting the word out even to this day. And then I would send out reminders leading up to that week, and definitely the day before and the day of. People are very impromptu with stuff like that. So still use your different streams of marketing to put it out there, but I would definitely send out reminders as you lead up to it, but still, if you can, and if you have access, email marketing as well. People are really moving towards that quickly, and it's widely used now. It's been really popular, and it's yielded some great results for various organizations and individuals as well.
Okay. In terms of video streaming, this is my question. I know you talked about TikTok. My understanding is that for a site like that, or a vehicle like that, it's only very, very brief kinds of videos, if I understand that correctly. But for Instagram or Facebook or others, you can use a much more lengthy kind of video streaming. Is that correct?
For TikTok, it's now extended. Your video can be longer.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you show it on like Instagram stuff, it's short, and then they say you can press it and say if you want to see more, the video was longer. There's usually an hour cutoff on all of them. Sarah, you can verify for me on that, but I think it's an hour cutoff on all of them when you stream, which is fine because people's attention span is pretty short, so you really want to get them in. They do. It's now extended. You can have it longer now on TikTok, and it's become a form of TV for a lot of people right now.
Right, with the concerts and all kinds of live events being shown that way.
Yeah.
Bonita has a question. Back to the issue we were talking about before, where's the line if you use your personal social media for your organizations? If you don't want your professional life to blur with your personal life, should you just not be on social media personally? How do you handle that distinction?
I tell people if you don't want to blur the lines, I've set up usually what we will call like dummy accounts. And what we mean by that is that it's an account that, because sometimes you're not able to manage your social media platforms if you don't have an account yourself. So you have to have an account to manage, let's say, Facebook. So if I don't want it to be connected to my personal Facebook, I will open and I don't want to say a dummy account, but just an account where I won't have my personal information on there or any of my what my opinions and stuff are, so that I'm able to, utilize it and manage it for the organization. And that's a good way to do that. And it also helps you, too, when you're looking at other features, because the only way you really learn how to use these new features and tools is to use your account. So if you're not on social media and you're tasked with it for your job, but you're not really don't want to be engaged, you can just open an account just to have it, obviously to manage the organization's account, but also so that you can learn about the features and how to use them effectively. So that's another way not to blur the line, is to open up another account that's not your own personal account. I don't know, Sarah, do you have anything you want to say to that?
Yeah, I have a personal Twitter that I use to follow my friends and family, and then I have a professional Twitter that I use to follow organizations and keep up with what our partners are doing. And it's nice because, you know, I have a personal email and then I have my work email, and I can have each one associated with those accounts.
Exactly.
I can keep things separate.
Okay, great. That's very helpful. We still have time for some more questions, so do continue to put those into the chat box. I also want to note that there is a link for that very brief survey to give us your feedback on today's webinar, and we would certainly appreciate it if you would do that. In the meantime, are there any additional questions? And while we're waiting for any others to come in, would you, Sarah or Anita, have any comments or other observations that you'd like to make before we close?
I would just say for social media that this process, and as you're implementing it, it is an ongoing learning process. It's evolving all the time. I mean, last year, the year before, we weren't even talking about TikTok or as much as about Instagram. So we don't know what the future holds as this evolves. So just stay on top of that as much as you can. I would also advise, don't open up too many accounts that you can't manage. Open what works and do it well. You don't have to be on every platform, just because even if your partners or even other colleagues are on it, if you don't have time to manage it correctly and to be effective, then do what you do well and then grow from there. Because that also goes back to your time, your team. Who do you have to support you? It shouldn't just be one person managing and having access. You do need to have backup, because if that person is not available or whatever happens, other people need to jump in to keep the ball rolling. Because once you start and put it out there, it's not wise to leave your accounts dormant for months or weeks. So once you start the process, you want to continue it, you want it to be effective, you want it to be engaging, but at the same time, you don't want to spread yourself too thin because you don't have the resources or support to manage multiple accounts. Okay, great, good advice. Colleen would like to know, and I certainly am right with her on this question, is there a possibility for offering social media for dummies? Colleen, I'm sure you're not a dummy, but I understand, and it would be helpful to see, how do you set up these accounts? How do you set up live streams? Is there a way that we could offer some more, let's say, tutorials on, how to do this? Or are there resources out there that really give you a stepwise process for how to begin setting up accounts and using accounts and understanding that? There is definitely, I'm a YouTube person, so I always go how to YouTube, and they have some great videos on there. Each one of these platforms has a video that allows you to do that. And you might have even given us an idea for another possibly webinar, we never know, on how to. Because this is a lot of information, like we stated in the beginning, to give you an overview. But I think the next step, what a lot of people are looking for, is how to do it and how to do it effectively, and seeing some how to actually set it up and be engaging. So I would advise YouTube and going to each platform and seeing, and they usually provide step-by-step instructions on how to do it. There's also Social Media Times, and there's also, I would definitely YouTube, because it gives you the visuals. Okay, great. What is Social Media Times? Oh, Social Media Times is a website that gives you some updates on what's going on in the social media world, and any new features or how-tos, because sometimes, especially Facebook is famous for this, they'll put a new feature out and you're like, well, what happened? And then they don't really, announce it, and it's up to the users and people to share the information on how to do it. So I know even for Instagram, there's a lot of new features on there where people are like, wow, how do I, live stream, and how do I do, send out multiple images. So that's a good website. I'm always on Mashable as well. That's another good one, mashable.com. So these are just outsources, information where they're always on top or abreast of what's going on in social media and digital worlds. I'm sure Sarah has some sites too that you go to for information and updates.
I see Sarah posted the link to Social Media Times.
Thank you.
Sarah, would you like to add anything to that? And Mashable too, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Nope, I think those are pretty good ones. I recommend as well.
Along with our tip sheets as well. Our tip sheets give some step-by-step as well, instructions. So
right.
Start with that as well. That gives you the overview and stuff. But then if you want to see, the best way to learn is to actually see people doing it. So I definitely thank you for that question, Colleen, and that's something that hopefully here at the team we can look into in the future as we do future webinars.
And when you get the PowerPoint in your follow-up email to this webinar, the links to those tip sheets are provided in the PowerPoint, and you can access them that way, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So Beth, I got so excited to introduce Sarah and Anita that I totally forgot to give a promo for next month's Learning Community. So next month on July 15th, we're going to talk about serving children and youth with co-occurring intellectual developmental disabilities and mental health conditions. This is going to be in addition to the leadership series that we're going to continue next month too. So Morgan, could you be sure to post a link for the registration for our July 15th webinar on co-occurring needs? And there it is. Morgan's always on it. We will also be sure to send a registration link to this meeting in follow-up to today's meeting. I want to also remind you and thank you for participating, remind you and ask you to just stay a few minutes longer to participate in our survey. And if Morgan, if you could pop that up again, there you go. Thank you. I had posted earlier the link to subscribe to the TA Telegram. If you don't already subscribe, please do so. You've now met the lovely Sarah, who is the mastermind behind that production each week, so thank you. I'd also like to thank once again our presenters, Sarah and Anita. Now you've seen the inner workings of the Institute and the TA Network. I love seeing some of our posts that I've seen come up with social media as the examples behind the scenes, so thank you for that. We also, Beth and I always are very, very thankful to our tech support, and we want to thank Morgan Bossette for being our host, for keeping us straight, for feeding all our chat box participants instructions. We thank you, Morgan. Beth, as always, I love working with you, and thank you all for joining us today. Please stay in touch, please share your handles, and please stay safe and happy. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.